Great. A very good morning, afternoon, and evening to all the viewers from all over the world. My name is Frank van den Driest, co-founder of the Institute for Real Growth. And with great pleasure and also pride, I'm introducing today Lubomira Rochet. She is an executive team member of LOreal, a company that was only last week called a standout performer by The Economist. And in her role as Chief Digital Officer, she is very much at the forefront of guiding and navigating L'Oreal through these massive changes and shifts that we see happening all around us. Lubomira, a very warm welcome. And let me begin by asking you two questions. Where are you? Always interesting in these virtual meetings. And maybe you can give me one word that describes how you feel at this very moment.
Hello, Frank. Hello, everyone. Warm welcome from Clichy. So Clichy is in the suburbs of Paris. It's where the headquarters of L'Oreal is sitting. So I'm at the office because I wanted to make sure that my Wi-Fi was okay because we had this important meeting today. So yes, I'm in the office today. And the mood is sunny.
And one word to describe how you feel?
Sunny.
Sunny, okay, that's the mood. I thought you were looking outside the window. Great.
Well, mood is sunny.
It's definitely the kind of mood we like in this conversation. So listen, Lubomira, we were connected through somebody that's in our CMO leadership program, a colleague of yours, Lex Bradshaw-Zanger. And Lex, by the way, talked extremely highly of you as a leader, as a visionary, but more than anything as a human being, which, by the way, more people that I spoke to in your environment mentioned. We'll definitely talk about that, how you bring humanity in leadership and in transitions like you lead. But there's one thing I want to say, because today is a special day for the IRG also, because we're conducting an experiment. And Lex Bradshaw-Zanger, your CMO of the UK and Ireland, is involved, which is that at the end of this hour, which will end on the dot at the full hour, we open a different Zoom link, which will be in the chat, in which two of my IRG colleagues, Eva and Aljan, will be hosting a CMO cafe with Lex, and all the viewers that actually want to discuss more about the topics that we've discussed, I don't know, recommendations maybe that you've made or insights they gathered from this conversation. So anybody interested in joining that, just look in the chat for the URL. Lubomira, I've been really looking forward to this conversation, more than anything to learn from the digital transformation journey that you're on. So that's what we'll definitely talk about, and also how to humanize that journey, and how you see and what your lessons are in the collaboration with marketing. Now, the objective of this next hour is to inspire our viewers, to engage them. They can ask questions through the chat and leave them with actionable insights and recommendation in the best sense. Is that okay?
That sounds like a plan.
Great. Let's get started then. So, digital transformation at L'Oreal. Could you tell me when and maybe even where that journey has started?
So I think that one of the first e-commerce websites that were launched in the company was 1999. It was Lancôme US. Lancôme US, if my memory is correct. So in a way, digital has been part of the atmosphere in L'Oreal for quite a long time. And then another very milestone moment was in 2010, when Jean-Paul Agon, our CEO, and who just passed the torch to Nicolas Hieronymus, who is our new CEO since 3 days. So Jean-Paul Agon in 2010 declared that the year of digital. And he said even it's the state of emergency for digital, l'état d'urgence in French. And so what he felt in 2010, which was in fact visionary, is that digital will change not just the marketing, not just the communication, maybe not just the way we interact with our consumers, but it will change profoundly the business model of the company. And that I think was very visionary. And then what happened is, in a very LOreal way, for those who know a bit the company, Jean-Paul often refers to the creative chaos of the company. It's thousands of initiatives started to emerge from countries, from brands, and so everybody got like really excited about digital. And at some point in 2012, my path crossed Jean-Paul's. I was working at a digital agency called Valtech at the time, and he asked us, Valtech, not like McKinsey or BCG or Bain or like a high caliber strategy consulting firm, to help him understand how he could accelerate this transformation for the group. And so in 2014, long story short, I joined. And then the whole idea was based on all these organic bottom-up initiatives that emerged from a lot of places in the group, to create a strategy, a direction, and a direction that would create an impact for the business at large. So this is when it started. I would say 1999, first website. 2010, Jean-Paul Agon declaring the year of digital, and 2014, when I was privileged and blessed to be chosen to lead this transformation. And it has been just a story of amazing acceleration since then.
Yeah, 7 years. That's for such a massive transformation. It's, on the one hand, it might sound short, but for you to be constantly, telling people to do things differently, I can imagine that those are 7 very intensive years.
They were.
When in those 7 years was the first time that you thought, okay, I think I'm getting it right. I think, we took the right turn here. We are onto something good.
I think several memories, occasions. The first thing is when we crafted the digital strategy for the group, and it was interesting because it was really it was very, very, very basic, in fact. Very basic. It was simple, memorable. And so the question was, what is digital actually really changing for our business, right?
Yeah.
So what digital was actually really changing is that it was lowering the barriers to entry in our industry, because the biggest competitive advantage of a company like L'Oreal or others in this field is not essentially in the order, but it's one R&I, research and innovation. Very powerful research and innovation teams. Beauty is an industry driven by innovation, so you really have to have strong R&I teams. The number 2 is, of course, media, which was the way to create impressions and memory and brand awareness, of course. And number 3 is distribution at scale. All the partnerships you were able to make and to deal with a lot of distributors. And so when digital really became a big force in beauty, what happened was that you could start a brand from your garage, working with third-party vendors to make your skincare line. You could do that. When the social networks essentially developed, people were growing brands purely organically, or through influence. So you didn't need those big media budgets. And number 3, you could go D2C, or you could go on alternative platforms, e-commerce platforms, where you didn't have to patiently build, the dozens and dozens of years of relationship, of space shelf and stuff with classical distribution. So this is what happened. And so we were like, okay, so that's the issue. That's the challenges. And what is the opportunity? And the opportunity, we really started from looking at the consumers and what they were doing. Number 1 thing was, it was 2014. And in 2014, we were doing like 2% of our revenues in e-com. That sounds like a century ago. And what we were seeing is that people were actually really willing to buy beauty online, which was not a given, because everyone was like, you know, when you buy beauty, you have to touch, you have to smell, you have to try. It's a very sensorial category. And our number one challenge was to say, yes, e-commerce gonna grow, and it's gonna grow significantly in the coming years. So we set to ourselves the goal, following our consumers' behavior, to reach 20% of our sales into e-com by 2020. We reached 27. So that was the first big bet. The second big thing we observed was that consumers were really wanting to have a more personalized relationship with the brands. Personalized meaning not only product, you know, not only personalized product, but personalized relationship, personalized communication, personalized advertising, personalized marketing. So this is why we embarked in our second big strategic battle, which was data-driven marketing. The more insights we were collecting into consumers' wants, needs, and behaviors, the better we could optimize and personalize our marketing. And the number 3 objective was to transform the marketing model from an advertiser, a 30-second TVC master, into embracing new forms of marketing, especially content, especially influence, peer-to-peer advocacy, services, all of those new ways to connect to consumers. And this has been the 20, 50, 100, so 20% e-commerce, 50% personalized relationship, and 100% love brands, digital love brands.
Yeah.
The 20, 50, 100 has been simple, memorable, and I think today you can ask to any employee of L'Oreal, they will know about it. And it was 3 objectives, not 10,000. That's usually the problem when you do transformations. You have like 10 game changers, 7 strategic levers, like nobody understands anything at the end. So you have 3 objectives, 3 very memorable figures. And that's the way we started to embark everybody behind us.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you, because you were obviously not the only ones realizing, hey, this digital thing, we need to do something. And you know, you hear all these companies that throw billions of dollars investing in becoming digital, putting really high, steep ambitions of changing into direct to consumer relationships and so on. I was wondering, what is it that L'Oreal, that you do differently to what all the others have been doing or are doing?
So I cannot speak for the others, but I know that for one thing, and I've been working in an agency before, so I've been exposed to other industries, other companies. Yeah. And the thing that is striking with L'Oreal is how culturally the company is fit for change, how culturally the company embraces change with grace and enthusiasm. Change is not perceived as something negative. And by the way, it's interesting because our CEO, Jean-Paul, ex-CEO, Jean-Paul, it's a particular moment because it's really like now, the change of guard. Yeah. He never, ever said that digital was a threat, a disruption, something negative. He always was very optimistic, positive, like it was all about the opportunities, all about the new competitive advantages that we will gain through it, all about the magnificent consumer interactions and personalized interactions we will be able to get. It was all about growth in terms of creating a new channel with e-commerce, connecting to consumers we could not touch in like tier 3, 4, 5 cities in China. Yeah. And so it has always been a story of growth.
That's super interesting that actually, and Lex will know that in this week's sessions that we've been running in our leadership program, we talk about an open culture as a building block for driving sustained humanized growth. And the open culture, one of the key characteristics is that these cultures embrace more change, entrepreneurship, and innovation, exactly what you are describing.
You know, if I may, sometimes I compare it to the metabolism of an organism, of a body. What is interesting is the more you do, the fittest you are. And I think this capacity to metabolize change will be really the thing that will differentiate the companies in the future, because digital transformation has been this big moment. But today, digital or like tech-led, transformation is diffracting in many sub things.
Yeah.
And like the only thing that is business as usual is transformation today. And I think that really this capacity to metabolize change and to accelerate in the capacity to embrace faster and faster, not one, but several transformation at the same time, will be, I think, in the future, a key differentiator between like successful and companies and the others.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And especially this whole almost making experimentation part of your DNA, just trying things and also allowing people to fail. So that's what we talk about in our program a lot, since it's mostly CMOs in the program. What can they do? And we talk about, creating fail boards and putting your own name on it just to show that it's okay to make mistakes. What would your recommendation be for CMO and other growth leaders to do or to foster exactly the kind of culture you're describing, you were just describing?
So several ways of answering here. One is, if I refer to my experience in L'Oreal, one very interesting thing is that L'Oreal is a very strategically concentrated company, but very operationally decentralized company.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. Well, I think it's a good thing, in fact, because at the end of the day, I mean, today, really, like the ecosystem, when we think of digital, right? For example, the ecosystem between like Korea and China and the US, the UK, Russia, Africa. I mean, you can have some big global GAFA, people and platforms, but at the end of the day, the ecosystems, the behaviors, the way you shop in China is very different from the way you shop in France, and all of that really militates, I think, for having a strong decentralized capacity to test. And it was interesting because I was coming in 7 years ago in a global role.
Yeah.
And so in a global role, in a very decentralized company, my first question was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Because, the power in a way is in the countries, in the brands. And so quickly I understood that what was important is, one, to put your ego completely aside, because that's not the question. To really foster and leverage the capacity of innovation of all the places. But, because there's a but here, if you do only that, you become a circus of test and learn and of POC, like proof of concept, and then you never scale anything. But the moment you are on something, then you have to scale it big. And this is where this passage between like the test and learn approach and it's cool to the scaling is the most subtle and difficult one in big organizations like ours, I guess.
Can you give me an example, and just an example that maybe the leaders that are watching or listening now can identify with? Because I'm really looking at what is it that they can do. It's so, you said one thing, identify that opportunity. Hey, we've got something here. Now we need the muscle of global to leverage this. And what is it that you did personally? Because indeed, I can see you in a global role with lots of responsibility and often very little authority. What did you do to make it happen, that they listened to you and that they indeed leveraged it?
So I would say number one, in terms of an example, the first example that comes to my mind is TikTok. TikTok, has been a massive force in the recent 2 years. The first time I saw ByteDance in Shanghai, it was 3-4 years ago. I was like, this is gonna be big. This is gonna be real big. Because you could feel that the platform was crafted and designed in a very smart way, from the UI, from the user interface to the user experience, to the data piece, to the recommendation, all of that, to the algorithm. All of that was making so much sense that sometimes in life you're like, that's gonna work. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but when to me, it happened that time. And so, long story short, of course, TikTok became a big thing. And so we've had in terms of marketing playbook several revolutions in the past 10 years. Yeah. So it's all about discoverability, how our consumers are going to discover our brands. So we had the big TV moment, then we had the big search moment, and then you started to have like video becoming a big thing. Then you had to have like the social networks becoming a big thing, and then you have another kind of social network, which is TikTok becoming. So you have had waves of innovation, and every platform has its own creative codes. And this is something that many, companies didn't get at first. Everybody was like, oh, that was a debate 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Oh, Facebook, those guys, they suck, like viewability is so low. Of course, if you put your 30-second TVC on a platform where the consumption time is like 2 to 5 seconds, of course, your viewability is going to suck, because the way your content has been built for a TV set and not at all for a platform that is flowing and a very short. So this is where we experimented a lot with new contents in some countries, and we learned about what works, what doesn't work. So we knew like very concrete things. We knew that if you don't put your brand and your product pack in the first second on a Facebook ad, it's not gonna make any impression. People are not going to remember anything. So we tested like dozens of parameters in terms of content that works, content that doesn't work. And what we did for Facebook, which was the GIF moment, like this was like, how do you create your advertising like a GIF? We were retesting with TikTok recently, and the way you build content for TikTok is completely different. It's really you're passing you're moving from GIF to memes. Yeah. So how, as a marketer, should I think of a content that can be culturally so relevant, a movement, a posture, a dynamic, a music that can be so culturally relevant that it becomes a meme. And this is a completely different way of thinking about your content as a marketer. And this we test in a handful of countries. And when we know, data-driven based, what works, what doesn't work, we scale it through what we call the golden rules. So we test, we learn on the platforms, on the content, and then we create golden rules in terms like what are the 3 golden rules that you have to respect on Facebook or on TikTok. And then we scale it overall across the board to all the countries, so that when you are in another country than the test country for TikTok and that you deliver content for TikTok, you know what works, because other countries would have gone through it before, and then you can benefit from the collective knowledge. I don't know if it's clear.
It's very clear. I was wondering, has there also ever been resistance to golden rules dictated from Paris to...
They were never dictated from Paris. They were never dictated from Paris because... Sorry?
How did they get created?
They get created because we test in a given country.
Yeah.
And we test with a brand and with the country's teams. So it's not something that's coming from the center, but it's something coming from a common experiment. Yeah. where we frame the methodology in a way, where we give support to the teams, and then it can be circulated. So it's never coming from Paris or center, but it's coming from a natural, real life experiment taking place in different countries with different brands. And this is how we scale it after.
And that's also what probably keeps the resistance low to zero.
Lower, let's say lower.
Okay. What have you come up in those years as the biggest blocker to the transformation and the change that you've been driving in the organization?
I would say the biggest blocker is depends on the companies. So maybe some of you guys know the ADKAR model. ADKAR is a very famous change management model. A being awareness, D being desire, K being knowledge, A being I don't remember, and R being reinforcement. I don't remember that. I will find out. If someone in the chat can find out what the A is, let us know. So it's ADKAR. Yeah. And in fact, depends on the company. Sometimes the A, the awareness is a big battle. So this is the whole evangelization phase of like why digital is important, why it matters. In LOreal, in a way, I was lucky because it was one easy, two almost done by our CEO. And so that was not the key point. D as desire for change. Again, in L'Oreal, it's a cultural force that is pretty favorable. In other companies, it's not the case. So you have to create that desire by showing example. What we did also in this phase of desire creation in L'Oreal is that it's a quite competitive culture. So we took like countries in the beginning. We took some countries like Canada, for example. It was a great country for us because Canada was willing to test a lot of things. And then when they were successful, we were showing the Canadian case on e-commerce or on marketing or on data. And everybody was like, oh yeah, I want to do the same. And I want to do even a better case than Canada. So it created this whole desire for shining, which is positive in a company. And then the K being knowledge. This is where really K and A, because I think it's ability.
Yes. Ability. Somebody posting that.
It came back to my mind after. Thank you for checking. So the K and A are really the critical phase of every transformation, because what happens? You are in a company that is like the queen of marketing. You know, it's like P&G, Unilever. Those companies are really like schools for marketing. And you're coming saying like, we need to transform a bit our marketing model. And so first you have to be legitimate to say that. And second, you end up with telling people who have been doing something very well and very successfully for so many years that they should do things differently. And even worse than that they do things that they are not good naturally at. They don't even know where to start from. They don't know what's important, what's not important. They don't know KPIs. And so they feel not only frustrated by the fact that their core expertise is not as valorized as before, but also because they will be judged on something that they feel naked about. And so the K and the A is really where we put 80% of the effort. I've always said that digital transformation in general, digital transformation is not about technology, it's about people. It's a people first thing. And this is where we did like basically three things. First thing is to recruit. When I came in, it was 200, a community of 200 people digital. Today it's a 3,500 people community. So we recruited people who knew how to do, who had the expertise and the ability and the knowledge to do. The second thing is we massively upskilled our L'Oreal colleagues, massive. So we upskilled 52,000 people. In the past year with the COVID, we created a full masterclass series. We are like broadcasting live from the office here every week. And we've created really engaging, fascinating content around many aspects of the transformation. So we've skilled 52,000 people, which is a lot. And 3, organizational design. And here, if I can take 1 minute just because that was a very key aha moment, where in 2014, we had 2 choices. Either we build a specific silo of hardcore, deep experts into the digital stuff, e-commerce, CRM, and this is great because this goes fast, because those guys understand each other, they go fast, they know what they do, and it's a fast way to get to transformation. To digital delivery, but it's not a fast way to get to transformation, because transformation is not about getting good at digital with good digital people, it's transforming all the others. So we decided not to create the silo, but to embed digital within all the functions. And when we decide to do that, it's interesting because everybody hates you instantly. The digital people, because they feel that they are not extraordinary anymore, because they have to report to those guys. And the marketing people who or the commercial people who I have to manage people. I don't really understand. I don't even know what their job is. And by the way, it's so different. And by the way, if I'm a sales guy, it accounts for 2% of my revenue, it's nothing. So why should I bother? So you create this instant problem. but it's the best long-term way to transform, because everybody upskills everybody else, and the digital people upskill the marketing people, but the marketing people upskill the digital people into the beauty business. Yeah. And so this is virtuous.
I think this is super critical, and I know everybody in our program totally recognizes this tension. What is it that you did? What intervention, or maybe you didn't, but other people did it, is to overcome that resistance of having these digital experts all of a sudden sitting, on the desk next to me, being very different, only 2%, and the expert not feeling very at home in a business unit where nobody speaks his or her language. What did you do to overcome that?
So when my mom asks me what I'm doing for a living, I'm saying like PowerPoints and translation. No, I'm kidding. But translation is an important one, because what I'm really doing, it's the translation between digital people and business people. And this is one part, and you should have a translator in your organization. So it should be someone should take that job of translating. And it's an interesting thing, because if I think about it, translation is all about translating consumer trends into experiences. It's all about translating an expert language. I remember my first meeting with Jean-Paul Agon, Nicolas Hieronymus, and all the COMEX talking about tagging, about tagging and cookies. That was a tough one. That was a tough one. And they were like, why should I bother? Like, why are you talking to me? And I was like, yeah, you have to understand that. Of course, you don't have to become a specialist of that, but you have to understand that, because that's critical to build the infrastructure of this digital thing. So being a translation and creating a common language, simplify the words so that everybody feels at ease, and not create a culture of estrangement, but create a culture of commonality. So build a common language this is why I'm insisting on the translator part. It's really, really massively important. Once, translation. Two, I would say it's a posture thing. If you come in like, I'm the CDO, I'm the representative of the modern world, and you're the guys from the past, ancient world. I mean, it's awful. One, it's awful from a human perspective, because those guys have been doing the growth for 110 years. They are delivering 20% net for 110 years, and they know their business much better than you. So please stay at your place. So that's humanly not possible. And it doesn't serve your transformation, because it antagonizes everybody. Yeah. So it's not the us versus them. It's not the modern and the ancients. It's us together. You upskill me on beauty. I upskill you on digital. So there's a deal. There's a deal there.
There's interdependence.
Yeah. And the number 3, I would say, is agenda setting. Agenda setting. That's massively important. It can seem like a detail, but it's massively important. The moment Jean-Paul Agon decides that at every country visit, so Jean-Paul used to travel every 2 weeks. He was visiting a country, and so all the countries were of course mobilized to show all the progress, all the key action points and everything. And so when he decides, because I really push hard on this one, that at every country visit, the number 2 topic after corporate presentation by the country manager is digital transformation for 2 hours. Lex can tell you about that. Every country needs to show up to the challenge. So it mobilizes the energy of everybody and creates the momentum.
Yeah, I think implicitly you're also indicating something extremely important, is the fact that the CEO had your back and helped you push that agenda. Because I think is that something that you negotiated up front, or that you sensed up front, or that, if you'd go in another role, that you would first really check that's the case?
It's number 1. I mean, culture, the ability of the culture to change, and the support of your CEO, like that's the 2 biggest prerequisites for a successful transformation. Yeah, for sure. And I sensed it since day 1, and I sensed that it was not just like it's digital is cool, like everybody's talking about it. Like, no, it was not that. It was, I know, me, Jean-Paul Agon, I know that this is going to change my business. And so the moment where a CEO understands that digital is not an expertise, but it's the way business is run today. Because at the end of the day, I've always said we cannot we cannot speak of digital marketing. It's marketing at a digital age.
Yeah, totally.
And the moment where your CEO understands that, he will support you. He will support you on the journey.
Yeah, Lubomira, this series is called the Humanizing Growth Series, and I'd like to talk about, and what we mean with humanizing growth is that basically you shift away from a short-term focus on shareholder value creation only to a longer-term value creation for all the different stakeholders. Now, let's through that lens look at LOreal. What are your key stakeholder groups? Who do you consider your key stakeholders?
Consumers, employees, communities,
Yeah.
the planet, the future generations, the ones that are not there but are waiting for us and for us to take the right decisions, and shareholders. But yeah, I don't know if it's in the right order, but I tend to say yes.
I was going to comment on that.
That's an order I like.
Yeah. No, well, we could have a whole discussion on that, but so looking at the interests of all and value of all these different stakeholders, where do they align?
Value creation. Value creation is where you can align. I believe in value creation, and I believe in alignment of incentives.
Okay, so tell me I'm not 100% clear. Tell me what you mean with value creation, because what I meant is the interest or value defined by one stakeholder might be different to that of other stakeholders. Yep. And where I was going to go is, where do you see commonality? So value for one equals value for the other. And where do you see difference in what value means for those different stakeholders?
I think that it's true that the definition of value is different from one stakeholder to another. For example, for consumers, it's all about, in our case, the product we deliver to them, the utility we have in their lives, and all about the service and the experience we provide to them while consuming our products. I think that's one. For the employees, it's really about being in a workplace where you feel people believe in you so much as to take bets, as to make you grow, and to see you as a potentiality and not just as someone who did that before. I think that's really important. That's really important. The planet and the future generation is, I think, pretty clear. We need to leave something in a better shape than what we found. And the shareholders, that's also pretty clear.
Yeah. That's pretty clear. You could argue whether shareholders are better off with a long-term or short-term focus, but that's a whole different kind of worms. But so what I'm really interested in is, how do you balance those different interests?
I personally believe that it all starts with the employees, because what is interesting is that the employees is the fuel, in fact, but in a very positive way. It's the energy more than the fuel. It's the energy that will drive and orient all the effort of a company towards common good. If your employees feel bad, then the energy will not flow in the right direction. If your employees are afraid, if your employees are anxious, if your employees don't believe in the purpose of what you are doing, there will be, I've studied sociology in my early years, and one book stood with me, and I don't remember the name of the writer, but it was Exit, Voice, or Loyalty. So those are the three the three types of, reaction one can have versus a problem.
Yeah.
And in many cases, when there are problem, few people raise their voice within the company, many exits, and many are going to conform and to comply to what's going on. So for me, the biggest thing in terms of a long-term health of a company is to avoid the ABC syndrome. Arrogance, number one, bureaucracy, number two, and complacency, number three. Because when you have that, you're really in deep shit. And your employees are absolutely key in maintaining a healthy metabolism for the effort of the company. And then when you have that, you can start to think about the value you create for your consumers through your product or your services. You can start to really have a positive impact in the world. You can start to behave in a mutually expansive way with your communities, your partners, your ecosystem. And you can provide returns to your shareholders. But I think if I think in terms of energy cycle,
yeah.
The number one for me, the chicken and the egg, the employees are number one.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you ever talk with shareholders about this topic? Is this something you discuss with your peers in the board, maybe with shareholders?
Yeah, we discuss it, and we've made a big cultural transformation in L'Oreal, because as many companies, we've had our culture, and with any culture you have a very positive things that are a little bit like ingrained in history, let's say.
Yeah.
And Jean-Paul called this transformation simplicity, and it was all about adapting the culture to a very modern, transparent, horizontal world, which I guess this is the world we live in. And I think that was a very healthy exercise. That was a very healthy exercise. A lot of people spoke out, which I think was very interesting and needed.
Yeah.
And so yes, we have really started from the employee culture.
It's interesting. You mentioned the word that really struck with me was mutuality, and I'm just thinking, if I think mutuality, and let's talk about your consumers, for example. With digital, you get so much more information, and if you're well intended, which I know you are, you translate it into a better experience for that consumer. But do you also use digital for consumers to know more about you?
Yes, we do. So for example, we have in beauty, we have a very strong, societal debate around, for example, ingredients. Ingredients like in food. In beauty, we have had a lot of conversations happening without us. It's happening in the open, in the internet, etc. And that has inspired us as a company, and we have really decided to go for a very transparent approach. So if you go to, it's not on all our websites yet, we're rolling it out, but in many instances, when you have a product page with the ingredient list, you can scroll and have a clear description of not only all the ingredients, because that's a regulatory ask, so it's just compliance, but explanation on why this ingredient is used. Sometimes challenged ingredients like parabens, etc., or alcohol. I mean, why they are used in specific formula. And so I think it's really also using digital technologies to inform, to educate, and to have a debate around things that are a subject of bigger debate in the society.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that should be really purpose-led. I mean, that's where I see most successful companies that are most successful do this in a very purpose-led way. Last week I heard a name that I never heard. You might have known or not. Maybe it's a Dutch phenomenon. I don't know, because I'm in the Netherlands. There's a lady called Esther Olofsson. Did you hear of her by any chance?
No.
She's an influencer, and she has 45,000 followers who are really engaged with her. The thing that really surprised me was when I read that Esther doesn't exist. It's a virtual person. And I thought of the conversation we were going to have, and I thought, you know, there's so many sides. There's black or white views are not, you know, very useful in this circumstance. But I guess as a CDO, you're also really involved in discussions around, you know, ethical standards and so on. Could you see L'Oreal working with Esther Olofsson or any other virtual influencer?
It's a good question. It's a topic that is on the table. It's a complicated topic. It's a complicated topic because once Esther, that's right, Esther.
Yeah.
Once Esther is for one Esther is a virtual person. Yeah. So in a way, she's taking away. We could see that as taking away a part of humanity, a part of having a human interaction. And it's also can be seen as a lie, which you know, it's something that is you cannot build a relationship on a lie, right? So that's one part. The other part is that in the world we live in, sometimes having a virtual person is easier in terms of relatability and representativity than having me or an Asian girl or a person coming from Africa. So you know, how are we going to solve for that problem? Because now the communities are more and more siloed. The communities, some person within communities want to be represented by people who don't look like them. Some people will want to be represented by only people who look like them. It's so personal, and this is something that you cannot code. I don't see how we can code that within an algorithm. So having virtual avatar or people like that can be also a way of neutralizing many debates. So I don't have a clear-cut answer, and it's a very profound question that we have not solved. But there are many angles, and I love to see in the chat if you think of other angles from which to approach that. Because I don't think it's a black and white thing.
Well, I think, listen, and that's why the disadvantage of a global company, because you've got very empowered local marketers and digital experts. And they might, you know, for all you know, somebody in Romania is creating one on behalf of L'Oreal, much cheaper also. So I think a set of clear principles is the only value you can add, like your golden rules that you talked about earlier.
And I think that transparency is something, I would say that to solve so many of those issues and challenges we'll have in front of us, I tend to believe that transparency and optionality, I would say, could be two avenues, two important avenues.
Yeah. Slightly or related to this, in the 50s, everyone knew Marilyn Monroe, and it was very clear what the beauty standard was at the time. In this digital age, do you believe that digitization uniforms the beauty ideal or actually diversifies it?
That's such a good question. I think it does both. Number one, digital, because you have so many people, like I described, trying to reverse engineer what works, what doesn't work, in terms of content, in terms of imagery, in terms of, you end up, it struck me one day, it was funny, it was 2-3 years ago, we were working hard on our Instagram feeds, trying to understand what works, what doesn't work. And at some point we were like deep into like the analytics and stuff, and we had like very clear guidelines and golden rules in terms, and suddenly I took a step back and I was looking at my Instagram feed, and I was swimming in an ocean of sameness. Like it was so anxiogene. I was so anxious. Like it was an ocean of sameness. Yeah. So that's one path. Yeah. The other path, which is radically the opposite, is that digital platforms and all the tools that go with them. Because if you think of TikTok, the amazing power of TikTok is that it gives to regular people, to you and me, the means of almost of a cinema producer of the 50s. So it gives not only the platform, but also the tools, the creative tools to the mass to create content, to portray different types of, beauty, if we talk about beauty. So you have both opposing forces that are coming at the same time. A huge homogenization on one side, and especially from a marketing angle, like a traditional marketing angle, and a huge diversity when you look at the prosumers, the consumer that are creators, the creators, on the other side, and I think this calls at the end of the day for authenticity. That's really where all of us marketers will have to make a huge effort in the years to come to go for less produced content, at least for one part of our production, for less produced content, for more authentic voices, for more authentic figures, bodies, faces, and to really understand that at the end of the day, beauty, and especially categories like makeup, for example, or color in general, is a magnificent way for us to empower people to represent their own identity. And it's really both. So this is the tension that we have to deal with.
So you're 7 years in this role now, right? So and this moving two ways. On the one hand, uniformity, on the other hand, diversification. Also when it comes to beauty standards, to color, to sizes, etc. In those 7 years, and I have no study to prove it right or wrong. I'm just curious about your sense. Do you think in those 7 years, the average self-esteem of young women has increased or decreased? And I'm not talking about L'Oreal's role. I'm just talking about what's happening in the world.
I think it has been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I think it has started to decrease first. And I think that platforms like Instagram were not helping, to be honest. And I love Instagram. I've spent and I still spend a lot of time on Instagram. But Instagram pre-stories and pre-reels and pre-stories, the moment where it was like a little bit of a digitalized Vogue magazine, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody was again swimming in an ocean of sameness of avocado toast and pink backgrounds. Yeah. We've had that time. And I think it showed something. I was born in Bulgaria, and in Bulgaria, we were seeing, like, it was a little bit undercover, but some people had access to a series like Dallas, Dallas, the thing.
Dallas,
Dallas, yes. And everybody was like, oh my God, like, that's life in the Western world. It's so cool. Look at the houses and everything. It was a little bit that Dallas moment for Instagram. Everybody was like, oh my God, look at the life they will have. Of course, it was a massive lie, and not a massive lie. It was a massive fabrication. And I think at that time, especially the younger generation, who are so much into the power of the immediacy of an image, I think, and I don't have data points, but I think and I feel that it has really caused people to struggle with their own lives, with their own sense of value. But I think that the evolution of the platform is very interesting, because when you look at, again, stories, reels, TikTok, you see that the content is completely changing. The content is becoming more entertainment, more self-joking, this distanciation between, like, the perfect image and the reality. I think the platform got a zeitgeist, and this is why TikTok is so strong, a zeitgeist of authenticity and of, like, yeah, that's me. And that's me in my real life, and that's me making stupid jokes and stupid dance movements, and I'm fine with it. And I think it's gonna go up.
Yeah, well, that's a positive. Good to hear. And by the way, I totally recognize what you're saying. Oh wow, I had many more questions prepared. We're almost there. I wanted one question at least on because the larger, as I said, the larger part of the viewers are marketers. if a marketer works in an organization where there's a chief digital officer, what is the thing that marketing shouldn't involve itself with, the CDO should, and what are things the chief digital officer shouldn't do because marketing does that?
That's a good question. I think that you know what is true in marketing is true for many other functions of the company. I often say that digital is the mother. The digital transformation is the mother of all transformation. It's not because I'm doing it. It's because behind the digital transformation there is a consumer transformation.
Yeah.
And it's because those new platforms have started to create a world where everybody could become a creator, where everybody has a voice in a debate, where everybody can advocate or sell your product. Like social commerce is becoming a big thing, and social commerce is nothing else than the door-to-door, model reinvented to a new generation. My mom could start a live streaming. I mean, if she's good at selling beauty, she could start a live stream, on Instagram and sell beauty.
Yeah.
So this is what, and this is the history. I've been in the internet for like 25 years, and this is the historical thing of the internet, is that it horizontalizes everything and it gives access to everyone, to everything. And so this is why the digital transformation is not a technology transformation, but it's a transformation that is transforming the way people do pretty much everything. And not only the tools for people to do things, but the way they do things. The way they date has nothing to do. I mean, it's the same big thing. You have to find a mate, but the way it's done is not the same. The way you shop, the way you discover brands, the way you experience banking, everything has changed, remaining the same, but has changed. And so it's the same thing with marketing. And I think the purpose and the mission of the marketing remains exactly the same, which is, number one, to be the voice of the consumer within the company. Number two, to understand the needs of those consumers and to create the best world-class products or services. And number three, to create the best experiences from a visual to a shopping experience around those products. The way it's done is different. So I think that every marketer should really understand digital. I think every marketer should become digital, because in China today, in L'Oreal, 95% of our medias are invested in digital. 95% of our content are digital. Of course, that's China and that's extreme, but it's coming pretty much everywhere because people are spending and consumers are spending a lot of their times there.
So is it fair to say that ultimately marketing and digital completely melt into one, and you don't have a CDO and a CMO, and whilst there still is a CDO and a CMO, you have to create full interdependence?
I don't know if there will still be a CDO and a CMO in the long run.
No,
I'm not sure.
As long as there will be, better be interdependent.
As long as it will be, maybe, absolutely, maybe be interdependent, but the thing is, marketing remains the same. It's the way it's done, and this is the why, the what, and the how. The why remains the marketing, right? But the what and the how is changing. So it's really, for a marketer today, it's how she or he can tap into the what and the how knowledge of the digital people and upskill them into the traditional business of the marketing. But I'm personally convinced that one day you won't need a CDO anymore, because it will have done its role, which is it would have fulfilled its role, which is to transform the way marketing is done.
Lubomira, we're almost there. A few closing things. One is I want to tell everybody who's with us that in 2 minutes' time, the cafe opens with Lex and two of my IRG colleagues. Secondly, since a while, we're asking our guests if there's any other guest that you would recommend and that you feel would fit this series well.
Yeah. So I would recommend you interviewing Frédéric Oudéa, who is the CEO of a European bank incorporated in France called Société Générale. And the reason why I'm saying that is that, of course, banking is sometimes considered as very far from humanized institutions. And I've seen, disclaimer, I'm at the board of the Société Générale, but I've seen the CEO embarking in a very strong ESG agenda. I've seen the CEO, amongst the biggest crises a bank could go through, remain the most humble, resilient, respectful leader that I've ever seen. So I would love to attend to that session if you invite me.
Great, you're invited. Consider yourself invited. And we've never had a finance CEO in this series. So there you go. To the viewers, I want to say that in 2 weeks' time, my good friend and co-founder of the Institute, Mark de Swan Aarons, will have a conversation with Diego Scotti, CMO of Verizon. Verizon is a, $130 billion telco in the US, and also has led over a similar period as you actually, Lubomira, a transformation of the marketing function there'll be a lot of lessons learned there for everybody. With that, Lubomira, I want to thank you very much. I could have gone on for hours. I completely testify to what Lex said. You're not only an inspiring and visionary leader, but more than anything, I felt and I feel now a very, very personable and human leader. Thank you very much for joining us. I wish you the very best. And to all the viewers, thank you for being here with us, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.